Greetings, family. Welcome. Hello, this is Dr. Kia Pruitt, and today is Thursday, January the 30th, 2025, and the time is 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join in, family. Let us know where you're hailing from. Check in, everybody. This is going to be a beautiful, beautiful day as we head into the weekend. So just let us know where you're hailing from, and we'll give everybody time to come in. But today, I wanted to briefly discuss how President Donald Trump is keeping his promises. And that's why I titled this Promises Made, Promises Kept to Make America Great Again. The military is truly in control. We are under a military operation. You can tell that the military is in control with President Donald Trump as the commander in chief. As a matter of fact, I want to show you how President Trump has mentioned the military many times throughout his speeches. So check in, family, and we'll get right into the show. I see many of you checking in from all over the country and the world. Thank you so much, family. I love you all so much. I see Texas in the house. Grand rising to you too. A note off the world from Georgia. Franny girls in the house. Welcome. Cleveland, Ohio. I see my home state of Ohio where I was born and raised. I see you all coming in with positive energy. Thank you. Theo says, here we grow. This is an exciting time to be alive. We are entering a whole new world. High food and nutrition is good to see you. Divine abundance is in the house. Magda is hailing all the way from, what is that? South Africa. Greetings to you too, Divine Abundance. Make sure you guys can hear me. Let me know in the comment section and in the chat if you all can hear me. Peace and love from Connecticut. Ronell Bay says, a Divine Abundance is also saying she's from Queen Mom. Greetings, Queen Mama. Oh, she's calling me Queen Mama. Greetings, darling. Pauline is in the house, sending love from New Jersey. Keep checking in, family. I see Texas in the house with Sister Lisa. Tyro is here from Louisiana. Who else is here? MM is here. MM says, love the all black sleepers. He's loving all the sleepers. Oh, he loves the all black sleekness. Thank you. I appreciate that. Good evening, Houston. Arizona's in the house. Hello. Who else is here? Las Vegas is here. Oh, you all can hear me. Cincinnati's in the house. Welcome. So, family, if you have missed the podcast that I did the other day with the Sheik, also known as Asir, Duke of Tears, he so eloquently talked about how America was once a thriving country and how it was systematically destroyed by the deep state and how we're restoring America and restoring the republic. On tonight at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Asir the Duke of Tears will come back for part 2, and he's going to talk about how we are ending corporate enslavement and how we are now restoring our sovereignty. And it's a beautiful, beautiful podcast that he's going to do. I just followed him for some time now. He's been a special guest for a couple of years, many times on our podcast. So I am anticipating this live podcast today at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So bring your questions, because this is going to be a return to sovereignty, a return to royalty, a return to peace and prosperity for this country, this great nation, America. Please make sure you come and bring your pencils and your papers, because Asir the Duke of Tears is very, very knowledgeable. He's read many, many books. He's also an author of books, and he has a doctorate in jurisprudence. He's a scholar, a very wise man, and again, he's a sheik. So you want to make sure you come prepared to listen. Bring some tea and coffee, some water, and your notes. He is really, really good at educating you and explaining things in such a way that you understand and understand them. So let's get into the podcast today, family. The military is very, very much in control. Yes, I'm glad you guys can hear me. I see you all checking in. So the military has to be in place because under law, and under the Constitution, or according to the Constitution for our republic, anytime you have experienced as a country a coup d'etat, where the country has been overtaken by rogue people, then your commander in chief or the country, or whoever you all or we put in charge as sovereign nationals, have the ability and by law to actually take down those rogue elements, also known as the deep state, the cabal, or the Illuminati. We have the ability and we are commanded actually to do so, to take them down and to use military force to do so. So that's why I want to talk about the military being in control today, just so you can see that President Trump is not operating by himself. He has people in place that are in front of him and behind him to do all the things that he's done. So we know that he's passed many executive orders already. We're only in the second week of office. And I've talked to you all about that a couple of podcasts ago about all the things that he's done, the executive orders that he signed to secure the borders, the executive orders that he has signed to make America great again and to put tariffs on countries that are doing business with us. As a matter of fact, he just said the other day that when you get rid of income taxes, then you stop funding wars, and that will bring about world peace. So we see him moving in such a way that he's establishing our sovereignty, our peace, and our prosperity as a nation. So again, getting rid of income taxes then is a way to systematically stop funding wars, because that's why they were income taxing the people, was to fund wars, and that would put us in a place of peace. And this is in alignment with Project Sandman, which was a secret agreement between 209 nations to restore planetary peace and also to go back to the gold standard and destroy the United States Incorporated and their financial powerhouse or system being the United States dollar and the central bank. It's the Federal Reserve central banking system. So President Trump said he is going to get rid of the IRS, or the Internal Revenue Services, and create the External Revenue Services in order to tax countries that are doing business with us. So he has been on a roll, family, to just dole out as many executive orders as he can. And the reason he's doing that is because he is the last president of the corporation. As such, he is using their tool, the executive orders, to destroy them. Okay. Speaking of destroying them, what have we heard recently in the news? One of the most pressing issues that we have, or a very serious incident that has occurred in the news here in America, is this colliding between the plane, the American Airlines, and a Black Hawk helicopter. So pause for a minute, because I want to tell you how these people that are in power actually do certain things to let us know that understand and overstand their coded messages, what is going on. So remember I said we're talking about destroying or systematically, thank you for the Cash App blessings. I think that was Carmen. We're systematically destroying the deep state. Okay. So the other day, President Trump reportedly posted this post, these words: watch the water. Watch the water is also what people who are in the military in the Q movement have been saying for a long time. Now, what is water? Water is a source of life. We are 75 to 90% of our bodies are made of water. In the biblical text, it says the creator, or the God of the Bible, Yahweh, moved upon or breathed upon the face of the deep. Water is a source of life. So when President Trump says, watch the water, you know to take note of something that's very significant that's going on. The same day that he reportedly said, watch the water, is when the American airline collided with a Black Hawk helicopter near the Ronald Wilson Reagan National Airport over Washington, D.C., and it crashed in cold, freezing waters in the Potomac River. That occurred yesterday, January the 29th. Thank you for the Cash App blessing, that Deborah Allen. That occurred January the 29th, 2025. What is 29? 2 plus 9 is 11. Again, a portal, a doorway. So a portal must have been opening on yesterday. And a doorway represents something, the old going out and the new coming in. So again, coded messages, some type of ritual happened on yesterday. I want to let you see or hear for yourself what President Donald Trump says about that very serious event. Somebody says the video keeps freezing. Oh no. Oh man. I'm sorry about that. Pay attention to the words that he uses, okay? This is President Trump speaking just like 2 hours ago.
I speak to you this morning in an hour of anguish for our nation. Just before 9 p.m. last night, an American Airlines regional jet carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 military service members over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., while on final approach to Reagan National Airport. Both aircraft crashed instantly and were immediately submerged into the icy waters of the Potomac. Real tragedy. The massive search and rescue mission was underway throughout the night, leveraging every asset at our disposal. And I have to say, the local, state, federal, military, including the United States Coast Guard in particular, they've done a phenomenal job. So quick, so fast. It was mobilized immediately. The work has now shifted to a recovery mission. Sadly, there are no survivors. This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital and in our nation's history, and a tragedy of terrible proportions. As one nation, we grieve for every precious soul that has been taken from us so suddenly. And we are a country of we are in mourning. This is really shaken a lot of people, including people, very sadly, from other nations who were on the flight. For the family members back in Wichita, Kansas, here in Washington, D.C., and throughout the United States and in Russia, we have a Russia contingent, some very talented people, unfortunately, were on that plane. Very, very, very sorry about that. Whose loved ones were aboard the passenger jet. We can only begin to imagine the agony that you're all feeling. Nothing worse. On behalf of the First Lady, myself, and 340 million Americans, our hearts are shattered alongside yours, and our prayers are with you now and in the days to come. We'll be working very, very diligently in the days to come. We're here.
So, family, I'm reading the chat, and I see our moderator, Love Being Nubian, said she works in the area and saw nothing and heard nothing. And I think that's very fascinating because sometimes these rituals are real and sometimes they're not. And I'm not here to judge whether or not it's real. I saw somebody else in the chat say that the Potomac, Black Hawk, and some of these other words that were mentioned are indigenous names or Indian names, Indian tribal names, or using Indian tribal language. So let's break down to the best of our ability what we know that is actually happening. Again, the elite or people that are in power speak in codes, and they have rituals. They do rituals like the games, the football games, the basketball games, and entertainment also. You see rituals. During halftime shows, you see rituals. And they will do rituals like these plane crashes. Even what happened, unfortunately, on 9/11 was some type of ritual. So here what we saw and heard was President Trump saying that American Airlines crashed into a Black Hawk helicopter near Ronald Reagan National Airport over Washington, D.C., and crashed into the freezing waters into the Potomac River. And that occurred during the portal, January 29th. What is a Black Hawk helicopter? A Black Hawk helicopter is a twin helicopter that's used by the United States military to transport troops and cargo. So let's take our time here and break this down, and you all please add to this. So American Airlines is very significant because during this last week, we've been having a lot of conversations about who is American and who is not. And President Trump has addressed that on many occasions. Who is American? He is making America great again for the Americans and the nationals here in this great nation. And he's putting us on the world stage again as number one or as a powerhouse. But this conversation about who is American and who is not has come about in terms of who can serve as president. Like, for example, is Kamala Harris lawfully able to serve. Some of these other people that have been serving, are you really a national? Are you American? Who is and who is not? And it's also come up when you think about President Trump talking about deporting migrants that are here that should not be here and illegal immigrants. Okay, so when he talks about American airline crashing with the Black Hawk military helicopter, what he's saying, in essence, according to what we know, is that those who claim to be American and are not are colliding with the military, and the military is bringing them down. They're having a crash, okay, and they crashed over the Ronald Wilson Reagan Airport, which that's significant too. For those who know that when you add up his name, it equals 41. If you know what 41 means, okay, I'll leave that up to you to decide, because everybody's not ready for that conversation. Over Washington, D.C., this crash or collision between people who say they are American and are not, and the military occurred over Washington, D.C., over the Potomac River. Over Washington, D.C., excuse me, and crash into the Potomac River. So they're systematically bringing down and crashing this whole group of people or ideology that have been supporting certain systems that have to deal with the cabal, and they're crashing it into the freezing waters because their time is up and their time is now frozen. And now we're going to usher into our sovereignty. So the Potomac River is actually located right next to Morgantown, Maryland, right? Morgantown, where you talk about look at the words, Moors, okay? What is the 1828 Webster definition of American? It is the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by Europeans, but now applied to Europeans. Everything that's been happening with the usurpation of America and our republic has always been about enslaving and captivating the copper-colored races or the Aboriginal people here in America. Because what they did, these bloodline families, is they usurped authority from the republic of the indigenous copper-colored races or Aboriginal people here and made them prisoners of war. So when you talk about being colliding with the military, the military is destroying and reversing all that whole system, all the things that the elite bloodline families did. The elite bloodline family, as you know, enslaved the people here, and they usurped authority from their republic or their lawful government, and they put in systems and different ideologies and programming to destroy this nation, and their tentacles reached out to the world. So the Potomac River is located right next to Morgantown or Maryland, which is about the Moors. Remember, on the flight, there were champion Russian ice skaters, allegedly, if they were really there or not. And we send all our prayers and positive energy to those families. But I'm just saying, what does it represent? Ice skaters, or being from Russia, more people coming from allegedly people coming from, and energy coming from certain mountains or mountainous regions that were here claiming to be American. Them and the whole system, the system behind all that we've seen, the bloodline families behind all that we've seen and experienced here in America, they are frozen. Russia is a very cold place. They are now frozen. The Black Hawk helicopter is a military helicopter. Now, I don't really get too much into the numerological breakdown of, how Black Hawk, according to the Moors that have instructed me or taught me, also talks about the H in the helicopter and how H is about reversal. I've talked about that a little bit. But the people or the entities that came out of the Caucasus Mountains and enslaved America and the planet, their system is now over and done with. And I've talked about how the Aryans have come or had come from the Caucasus Mountains into our reality and actually destroyed the female gods or feminine principle or the divine feminine, and how these Aryans were a warring group of people, and how they systematically destroyed all of the female gods and female artifacts and instituted and brought in a system that was very, very warlike. Some people will call it patriarchy, but I call it like tyranny, because I support patriarchy and matriarchy working together in harmony. But these beings that came out of the Caucasus Mountains, we don't know if they were human or not, honestly. But they came out of a very, very cold region. They were a very warlike group of people. They enslaved humanity and the planet, and it began right here in America because America is where it all began. Okay, so all of that is being destroyed, and this whole system that they've brought in that some people call white supremacy, which has nothing to do with skin complexion. It's all about dealing with enslaving people and keeping their minds entrapped. Okay, so what they did was they brought in these systems and programmings like white supremacy, but they also they're really smart. Then they brought in these programs like diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, racism, sexism, infighting between religious factions, different people fighting that represented different political affiliations or ideologies, so that they could cause this type of confusion and enslave everybody. So again, American Airlines colliding with the Black Hawk helicopter of the military is the military crashing against those who saying they are American and putting them on ice, which is why they dropped into the river and froze. So I want you to just keep an open mind as you see those type of things, and also look for signs that will let you know that they're talking to each other and that they are actually letting you know, and I know what's going on behind the scenes if you know how to decode. So let me show you one of the first article that I saw that came out about this that really piqued my interest and made me look for some of the numbers that we know that they enjoy or they like to bring about when they talk about things or when things occur. So we're talking about how the military is in control. Please share your thoughts, family, on what do you think about this so far. Here's one of the first articles that I read. This article here says American airline planes carrying 64 people crashed midair with Army Black Hawk helicopter. Hawk. But by the way, you see Hawk. My great grandmother's name was Janie Hawkshaw. She is, of course, an Aboriginal indigenous person here. So when I see the name Hawk, and I know Hawkshaw, though that term actually is one of our terms as an Aboriginal person, I can see that, I can recognize it. And it crashed over Washington, D.C. because Washington, D.C. is not a real city or area that we know. Wasn't owned by Americans, true Americans. So Washington, D.C. on some maps doesn't even exist anymore. They're doing away with it. They're actually eliminating this whole area called Washington, D.C. So here in this particular article, it says that the American Airlines flight collided with a U.S. Army Black helicopter on Wednesday. The passenger plane had 64 members. So when I saw that, I said, okay, 64 is not normally a number that I see that they talk about, because 6 + 4 = 10. I said, no, there's going to be another article to come out, more news to come out so that we can know what they're actually saying. But it said at the time there were 64 members on board, while the helicopter had 3 soldiers. You know, they do things in threes. The threes represent Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Asar, Aset, Heru, Osiris, Isis, and I forget what's the son's name? What's Heru in Greek? Horus, or no, you guys know what it is, but let me know. So, but they like to do things. The 3 represents the Trinity. 3 soldiers were on board. The plane collided as they were approaching runway 33, okay, and happened around 9 p.m. 9 is a number that represents the ending of one thing and the beginning of a new thing. So when you look at the number chart, 0 to 9, 0 is the beginning, 9 is the end, and then you go right back to 0. So they're letting you know that the whole system that was put in place is being systematically destroyed and put on ice. So you're going to hear a lot of things come out about freezing, like we had an Arctic blast You hear information. I wouldn't be surprised if Frozen 3 or whatever the number needs to. I think they had two movies. I wouldn't be surprised if a Frozen 2 or Frozen 3 comes out. But you're going to see a lot of talk about freezing, the Arctic, Antarctica, because everything that was in place is being frozen and it will no longer exist. And we're turning back over to our republic and to a new way of life as we usher in the golden reality. Someone also said in the chat that we are in the age of Aquarius. So thank you for saying that as well. Keep talking and let me know what you think, family. So again, President Trump promised to make America great again, and he's keeping those promises. Unfortunately, they're doing certain rituals to let us know what's going on. Now, whether or not real people are dying, I don't know. I can't attest to, but I can just show you the rituals that I see happening right before our eyes. And then this morning, he spoke at 11 o'clock a.m. to address this issue. Remember, 11 is a portal or a doorway. They love speaking in codes. A portal, out with the old, in with the new. Right after he did that, another article came out. And I'll see if I can find what that one says. Oh, this was interesting that President Trump blamed DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, as a reason for these plane crashes. When he said it yesterday, reporters took note of that and they kept asking him, what do you mean by that? And a lot of people got offended by that. Why is he blaming this crash on DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? Well, he did explain that a little more in his report today. And basically what he said was, I think I need to get back to that. When you hire people that are not the most qualified, then you have situations like what we saw on yesterday. You see how they're speaking in codes and they're letting us know, what they're really doing. He said, or blamed DEI at his press conference. And then he said 67 people. There's our number 13, okay? 13 is what the deep state will tell you is an ominous number. But 13 for some ancient cultures actually represented peace, power, and prosperity. So keep that in mind as we move forward. I don't want to go too deep into this article, but I can show you highlights. President Donald Trump blamed DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion policies for the deadly collision between Army Black Hawk helicopter and American Airlines regional jets in Washington, D.C. He says you have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed. You have to be the highest intellect and psychologically superior people were allowed to qualify for air traffic controllers, before quoting articles regarding the Federal Aviation Administration's DEI push before he took office. Brilliant people have to be in these positions, the president said. Later, he said diversity hiring could have been linked to the crash. He said earlier also, officials weren't sure what led to the collision in which 67 people died. But when you read further in the article, basically what he's saying is they didn't hire the most qualified people to ensure that there would not be a crash. But when you're looking at from a spiritual perspective, or you're looking with your first eye, what some people call your third eye, you can see that this was some type of ritual. There's no way a military Hawk helicopter is going to collide into an American airline airplane haphazardly or just by chance. But Trump is using this as an opportunity to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, we're praying for the families and we're hoping that nobody lost their life. But according to them, 13 people lost their lives. Remember, I said Trump reposted before this, the day that this happened yesterday, watch the water. So we saw this colliding of these two airplanes, or one helicopter, one airplane into the water. freezing over this system that had been controlling the people and the planet here in America and abroad. And when you think about the water, I don't know if you all knew this, but on Tuesday, just the day before yesterday, President Trump used the National Emergency Act to order United States military into California to turn on the water. He told them, turn on the water supply because we have to get rid of these fires. And we know that there is water actually in California flowing from the Northwest into California. So he sent the military to handle that situation. Unfortunately, when you look up the articles to support this claim, what you'll see is articles negating it. Mainstream media saying it's a hoax, it's a fallacy. But Trump said out of his own mouth that we sent the military into California to turn on the water supply. Watch the water, family. A lot of people were not aware that California is a man-made desert, as well as that whole region over there. Texas is a man-made desert. Arizona is a man-made desert. You had billionaires that were controlling the water source, holding the water back, keeping the people from being hydrated, keeping the plants from being hydrated. You didn't even have real grass in California. I used to live there. Keeping you from also being able to grow foods in certain areas by holding back the water, and causing fires in certain places in California and blaming it on God and the weather, blaming it on the sun. When all they had to do was stop using directed energy weaponry, mechanisms to burn down the land and then turn on the water. So let me show you an article where President Trump said that he was using the military to turn on the water. I can find it. Again, when you look for these articles, they'll say they're fact checking. Here's an article that says California officials fact check Donald Trump's claim that the military turned on the water. The California Department of Water Resources on Tuesday rejected President Trump's claim that the United States military turned on the water supply in the state. In a statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, the department said the military hasn't entered the state. The federal government restarted federal water pumps after they were offline for maintenance for 3 days, the Post states. State water supplies in Southern California remain plentiful, they assert. Again, they're saying that the military did not enter California, but you and I know, we all know that the National Guard and the military has been put in place for some years now, ever since 2020, during the shutdown, the global pandemic, and probably before that. But we know for a fact that the military, National Guard were at certain areas or during certain points of our country and during in certain borders, around certain borders during 2020. Well, they never left. So President Trump is using the military to systematically destroy the deep state, the cabal, the Illuminati, the United States Incorporated, the bloodline families, however we see it. And he's restoring the republic for America and making America great again. So he said, watch the water. So we talked about the plane crash and we talked about turning on the water. Now we're going to see waters turned on all over the country. And these waters will make the desert places plentiful. We're going to see more greenery, and we're going to see our planet warm, not scorching hot, but warm, and return back to a subtropical planet like it used to be before, these entities came out of different places to make it cold on our planet and make it unbearable for us to live. Now, I was looking at some of the different people's posts on Twitter and on social media, and somebody asked, does the plane crash equivalent or equate to a dollar crash? Possibly, because the dollar is, or the United States dollar is, the greenback is what the central bank of the Federal Reserve used to enslave humanity. The dollar, the United States dollar, was the world reserve currency. And from from listening to people and studying on your own, that what made the United States dollar the world reserve currency was the United States Incorporated's agreement with Saudi Arabia to protect the Saudi kingdom in exchange for their oil. And in exchange for their oil, the United States Incorporated would force all nations to get oil from Saudi Arabia and use the dollar. That, again, is what not only made the dollar the world reserve currency, but it gave the United States financial and economic hegemony. Well, all of that is being reversed, okay? All of that is being frozen. And it will no longer happen again. And this is why President Trump said he's going to drill, baby, drill. One of his executive orders was to drill for oil here in our own nation and stop depending on nations like Saudi Arabia. Well, we also know that Saudi Arabia's contract with the United States Incorporated was not renewed as of June 29th of last year. It was supposed to be renewed. It was not. Saudi Arabia also joined BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa coalition, and it became known as SALBRICS. And then after that, other nations joined BRICS and it became known as BRICS Plus. So when the countries stopped trading with the United States dollar and using their own currencies backed by precious metals to trade, to get oil or to trade for anything, that made those nations sovereign, and it systematically began a destruction of the United States dollar. So perhaps, yes, the plane crash did represent a dollar crash, because when you're collapsing the system, you're collapsing the government, the fake government, you're collapsing the powerhouse, then you must also collapse their tool, their system of currency or money that they use or had in place to control everybody. So what made people wonder if this was about the dollar collapse more so than, us knowing that the dollar is ending and that there'll be no more dollar dominance, since all these countries are using their own countries and their currencies are no longer pegged to the United States dollar, but now their currencies are pegged to the resources or precious metals in their countries, is looking at the United States debt clock. So when they looked at the United States debt clock, they said, well, this happened, or at least they noticed it at the same time or around the same time that this crash occurred on yesterday. Look here at the United States debt clock.org, and you will see, you can either open the secret window here on the top right, my right, or you could just look here and see this picture. I might have already clicked on that secret window here. All in, it says United States wealth discovery. The United States debt has a zero or, canceled out, null and void. Whereas over here, it says the national debt was $26 trillion. Here, we don't see that. There's nothing here. It's canceled out. It's null and void. So is it possible that gold had been put forward already to pay off the debt here in America? Possibly, and they've completely destroyed and collapsed or crashed the United States dollar? Possibly, or at least we see that we're on its way to being collapsed. And we know that we'll likely have a debt jubilee, because many economists purport or suggest that the only way you can deal with debt in the amount of 30-something trillion dollars is to have a debt jubilee where you forgive the debts. And this is something that has occurred throughout history, and it's a biblical phenomenon. In fact, I showed everybody a Zero Hedge article that says that we are about to have a debt jubilee in biblical proportions. So I'll show you this. All of this is important, family, because we're making America great again. We're making our nation peaceful, prosperous, free again. And Trump is the tool that is being used to do that. And he is using the executive orders against them, against the deep state. So he is the commander in chief, and he has instructed the military to do his bidding. So this article says a debt jubilee of biblical proportions is coming. Are you ready For thousands of years, the rulers of ancient Babylon discovered a technique to stave off violent revolts. Because if you keep pressuring the people and raising the prices, raising inflation high, and just making it unbearable for people to live, they will take to the streets. And we've seen that happen historically. The article here says that in ancient times, people often became hopelessly indebted to their creditors. As debts mounted, social unrest would boil over, threatening the stability of the entire ruling system. They don't want to be destabilized, not by we the people. So their solution was radical yet effective. And what they did was they enacted widespread debt cancellation called a debt jubilee. Where did they get this ideal phenomenon called the debt jubilee? From where did they get it? Well, the practice, according to the article and according to what I know, being a woman of Hebrewic bloodline, Hebrewic faith, trained and according to my faith and my ideology and my bloodline, is that a debt jubilee was enacted as a biblical way to completely get rid of the debt of the slaves or your indentured servants so that you wouldn't have a revolt. And during this time, you also gave the land a rest. So you did this every 7 years, and then you did it during a 7 times 7 year cycle on the 49th year. But then you had a big Jubilee celebration on the 50th year. So every 7 years, you were supposed to completely eliminate debt and forgive the debt of those who owed you. The article here says debt jubilees acted as societal pressures released valves when no other option remained. And now keep in mind, I'm saying we have so much debt here in America that, who was it? Janet Yellen said, we've reached a threshold. We have to do something. We need to take extraordinary measures to deal with this whole debt problem. So keep in mind that the article says that this is something that historically different nations did as societal pressures mounted. And this is something that they did when no other options seemed available. So the practice spread throughout the ancient world and became codified in various civilizations. For instance, the book of Leviticus formalizes that jubilees as the conclusion of a 49-year biblical cycle, 7 cycles of 7 years. This particular author of this article says, I believe this ancient practice is poised for a major comeback as government, corporate, and personal debt levels today have reached unsustainable heights. He's not the only one who says this. Economists have said this. Financial experts have said this. The best way to get rid of the insurmountable debt that we have is to have a debt jubilee, a national debt jubilee, and a worldwide debt jubilee. Debt jubilees are government decrees that trigger massive wealth transfers, creating big winners and some losers. So it goes on to talk about student loan forgiveness, and other types of ways that you can have a debt jubilee. So a debt jubilee in biblical proportions is coming, the article states, and it asks, are you ready? So it's possible, as I said before, that the plane crash also was equivalent to a dollar collapse. We do know at the end of every empire, you print as much money as you can, you rack up the debt, and then you destroy that system and go back to a sustainable system. They call it the crack up boom. So look up crack up boom. Again, print as much money as you can. And what they do too is buy as many resources as well. Then you systematically raise the debt, and then you systematically destroy that system because it's not sustainable, and you go back to a sustainable system, which is the gold standard. So yes, the plane crash could be equivalent to the dollar collapse or dollar collapse. What will come with that? A dollar collapse is a stock market crash, a housing market crash, an automobile market crash. This crashes all over the place, but that is an opportunity for you and me to then go into the automobile industry, the housing industry, or real estate and buy up depreciated assets. This is the way that people became wealthy during the Depression in 1929. So just keep that in mind. If you cannot get into certain assets or buy certain assets now, then once everything has collapsed, you'll be able to do it. But some of you are able to do it now because the housing market is actually coming down. And we know that because we can actually see it. And we know that State Street, BlackRock, and some of these other big corporations that have bought up land and real estate during the pandemic and right after it did so because a lot of people were losing their houses during the foreclosure era during that time. And now they had to look for a place to rent. So all these big corporations raised up the rent, made it impossible and unbearable for people. And some people that could afford it got into those houses, got into those apartment complexes that now were taken over by these big corporations. And they kept raising inflation, kept raising the prices. Unemployment rates went up. People lost their jobs. Now we can't afford our rents. Now, what do you have? A big old problem with homelessness. So these big companies said, hey, it's unsustainable now. Nobody's renting from us. Nobody's even renting these, buildings, corporate buildings. So they're dumping the real estate back onto the market. And so that makes a way for you to buy up real estate. Also, we saw Evergrande, which is the largest owned real estate company by the CCP or by China. We saw them file for bankruptcy about 2 years ago, or a year and a half to 2 years ago here in America, because they had bought up a lot of our farmland, a lot of our real estate, but they went bankrupt. They filed bankruptcy here and they were forced to liquidate their assets. So that means more real estate is being dumped onto the housing market. Then last summer, we saw an article to come out that said that the automobile collapse had occurred. And what the article suggested was that a lot of people could not afford to pay their automobile loans. So many of those lenders were going to repossess cars, but they didn't have enough people to collect the cars. So the article suggested that a lot of these companies were like just giving up and saying, we're not going to do this anymore. We don't have enough manpower to go collect the cars. People aren't paying on their loans. We got all these cars sitting here. So the articles that I read and reported on last summer said the automobile collapse has started. We also know in terms of depreciating assets that you have currencies that have depreciated over time, world currencies or foreign currencies that have depreciated because the United States Incorporated, which again is the neo pseudo Roman Empire, put sanctions on these countries that didn't want to play ball with the United States Incorporated. They didn't want to trade with the United States dollar anymore. So they would put sanctions on them, or they would send the military to those countries and destroy their nation through war. That decimated their currency, that decimated their economies, and it brought their currency's rate down, especially with the wars, the sanctions, and then inflation on top of that. And the people that were in the know would buy up those currencies once they had been, devalued through wars or sanctions, held on to them, waited till after the war, and then wait until America went back into those nations, rebuilt the infrastructure, rebuilt their country, and then the country's currencies will go up in value. And then it was reinstated. The country's currency's rate was reinstated back to their pre-war, pre-sanctioned rate. And then you can take that currency, now that it had revalued or been reinstated, take it to the bank and get a high exchange rate and become a millionaire. So that has occurred historically, and now is an opportunity if you are able to do the same thing now that you see those assets depreciating. This is one way, because the Debt Jubilee article talked about a wealth transfer. This is one way you can get into the wealth transfer. You can also get into the wealth transfer right now through depreciated assets while gold and silver is still low, or I guess it's relative rather than as low, because silver and gold have been suppressed, but it's breaking out now. they have been suppressed because you have people in place that were holding the value or the prices down of silver and gold so that you and I would not know that silver and gold were lawful money and that one day we would return to the gold standard. So silver and gold are being revalued or going up in value. However, if you have money or if you have fiat dollars, you might consider rolling some of that into gold and silver while these assets are still depreciated before they go back up in value. Now, one of the ways I've told you can do that is by if you were interested in gold, is getting gold coins and gold bullions, but you can also look at gold aurum notes, AURUM, which are called gold backs. I've shown you how some of them are as low as $2.62. And this is 14 karat gold pressed into a note, 0.999 pure gold pressed into a note, 14 karat, and some are 24 karat. And the way they do this is it might be 1/100th of a troy ounce of gold pressed onto that note, or 1/1000th of a troy ounce pressed onto a note. But it is lawful money and legal tender, meaning you can use these gold aurum notes to buy local goods and services in many states. Right now in America, we have 46 states that have reclaimed silver and gold as money. I'm just showing you how America is and has always been a great nation. Okay, we have had people to destroy this nation and put certain rules and legalities and policies in place and ideologies to destroy our mentality, destroy our way of life, destroy our monetary system. But Trump and the military, the alliance, Earth Alliance, and those beings that are here to help us are doing things to make America great again. So 46 states in America have repealed or removed the state sales taxes from precious metals. No more taxes, or at least if they haven't removed all of the taxes from precious metals, they've taken steps to do that so that they can reclaim silver and gold as money. Because when you tax money, you're actually operating unconstitutionally. You may not tax money. What the deep state had done is said silver and gold are no longer money. Silver and gold are to be viewed as a commodity, like a collector's item, like trading cards or art pieces. And when they did that and classified gold and silver as commodity, then they put taxes on them. Well, now lawmakers are saying you're not able to do that. Okay, in our state, we're not going to allow taxing of precious metals. And this is what they're doing to align with the Constitution that says that the only thing that can be used to pay off debts in America are silver and gold. And it also says that the dollar is defined as a fixed weight in silver. Then we see Representative Alexander Mooney. You see the word Mooney, which is money, okay, with just an extra O. Everything they do is intentional. Alexander Mooney came forward with House Resolution 5404 in 2018. He came back later with Andy Briggs and Parag Gosar in 2022 and 2023 with House Resolution 9157 and House Resolution 2435, and called those the Gold Standard Restoration Act to define the dollar as a fixed weight in gold. So what I'm saying in essence is that lawmakers are actually behind the scenes in each of the states doing what they can do to restore the monetary system and base it on gold and silver in alignment with the Constitution for our republic. This is how we know republic is being restored. The republic is being reinstated. And it's also being re-inhabited. Okay, we'll save that for another discussion. But President Trump, again, is destroying the cabal, the deep state, the Illuminati, those bloodline families, and anybody that colluded with them, and returning us to the republic. He's using the military to do it and executive orders. And speaking of the military, I don't know if a lot of you know this, but some of our military before Trump had come back that was still working behind the scenes to destroy the deep state were working without pay. How do you know this, Pruitt? Because I know people in the military who contacted me, told me about all the tireless work they were doing, and said, we're not even getting paid, but we're still working for the people. We're working to restore the republic. We're working in order to restore our sovereignty, our peace, and our prosperity. So we want to take a pause to say to all our military men and women who are doing the work, the dirty work, to clean out those deep underground military bases that have been under many other people's rule, doing harmful things to children, laundering human beings and drugs and money. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and have done. Thank you for rescuing so many children that we can't even keep count. As a matter of fact, one of the latest reports that I saw said that you military brothers and sisters have rescued more than 750,000 children to date that have been trafficked, put through MK Ultra mind control programs, systematically abused, traumatized, drugged, and taken from their family members. So thank you, military. And we also apologize for asking you all and being online, complaining, what's taking so long? Where's my money? Because that is gross disrespect to our military men and women who have worked tirelessly without pay to rescue these babies. So we apologize. I am deeply sorry, military men and women, for our disrespect, flagrant arrogance and anger that is directed towards you and to those who are working in places to return our prosperity and our peace and our sovereignty. A lot of us just didn't know how deep the deep state had run, but I would ask that you would please accept our apology and grant us forgiveness. I'm very, very grateful for the work that you've done. And speaking of the military, I just want to say that, as I just stated, more than 750,000 children were rescued. Why? Because President Trump has been the CEO behind the scenes for a long time. Even during the Biden administration, the Biden character was a character, just that. And he was running roughshod for 4 years, but Trump was still doing the dirty work, the hard work. The Trump character, Trump, I don't know what you would call him, whoever's operating, because we know they have body doubles and such, so on and so forth. The Trump avatar was working tirelessly to rescue those babies, and he used the military to do that. In fact, he didn't just do it then. Just recently, President Trump signed 4 executive orders reversing a lot of Biden's initiatives, and he issued out executive orders to put more money into the military so that he can rescue these babies. So I'll get back to those 4 executive orders in just a minute, but I did want to talk briefly about these babies that have been rescued. I think I have notes here about these babies that have been rescued. So I'll just go off the cuff. What happened was you had children that were stolen from homes and families through CPS, the Children's Protective Services, which was the biggest arm of the fake government that were involved in trafficking of children. So they would still take the children from the homes and they would sell them off to different corporate entities or sell them off to different families that would systematically abuse these children. And then you also had children that were just snatched off the street, put into deep underground bases, and they were mutilated, they were abused, they had their blood taken. The chrome that starts with the A that comes from the blood is what many of the people in power would drink in order to sustain themselves, and they would get high off of it, and it allegedly reverses them in age. And this is why people in Hollywood and entertainment and even political figures would look like they were reversing age, and they would look younger. They would come to you and tell you they're eating healthier, they changed their diet, but in reality, a lot of them were like drinking the essence from these children. Many of the articles that we've read suggest that major corporations were in on this. They were funding it. We also know that pharmaceutical companies were in on the drugging and the MK Ultra and mind controlling and abuse of these children. Many organizations and agencies, Walt Disney, those type of lights, were also involved in trafficking and stealing those children while those children were at these different places for enjoyment and family enjoyment. So you had major corporations that were involved. You had bankers also that were involved, and banks that were funding this. And you had the pharmaceutical company. And this is why Trump is systematically going after all of those. And he's using the military and executive orders to do so. Crazy, right? So this could be a reason why we see a lot of banks being taken over, because the banks were funding this. Some of the banks were funding this. But we do know that, a lot of banks were not Basel III or Basel IV compliant, meaning that they didn't recognize gold as a tier 1 asset. Some of these bankers were participating in making you take out loans with interest rates, and then they would steal your money we all have a trust, steal money from our trust and pay themselves, but then make you and I pay them back with interest on top of that. So banks were doing all kinds of things. They will also take the money that we would deposit in the bank as a creditor, because when you and I deposit money in the bank, we are creditors, okay? When we're lending money to these people, the bankers, and to the elite, when we put money in our bank, so in the banks. So they were taking our money, funding these type of operations, dealing with drug trafficking, child trafficking, ex-say trafficking. And they were also trading some of that money and investing in whatever they wanted to do. And if they got in trouble, they just used that money that we put in there, that we loaned them because we're the creditor. They would take that money and they would just bail themselves out, and they called it a bail-in. They were doing a lot of nefarious things. So that is a reason why many of them are being overtaken. And the ones that remain will be absorbed by the United States Treasury Department and turned into wealth management systems or wealth management centers, because we're going to all be wealthy during this new golden reality and during this wealth transfer. So that's why it's going to be deemed a wealth management system centers. But a lot of banks are collapsing right now. In fact, the first bank that was just abruptly shut down by U.S. authorities just recently happened. And this is the first bank failure of 2025. The United States the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, also known as the FDIC, just recently reported that the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations has closed Pulaski Savings Bank in Illinois. That is the first bank to collapse or to be taken over in 2025. But we've seen many banks collapse over the last couple of years. And while these banks are collapsing, you have other banks that have hoarded gold in record numbers. And the reason why they have the ones that remain is because they're preparing for this transition where gold and silver will be lawful money. Also, they've hoarded gold or accrued gold in record numbers over the last 2 years, because banks now have to recognize gold as a tier 1 asset. What that means in layman's terms is that banks have to recognize gold as money. Not only did they have to do that, but they had to prepare to receive tier 2 assets. Your tier 2 assets are considered foreign reserves or foreign assets. So while banks were preparing for the gold standard, they also met globally last summer to make sure they were ready to receive tier 2 assets. So make sure you look at my video that I talked about that, where I talk about that, and it's called Good News or Great News for Currency Holders. When the banks met globally to make sure that they were ready to receive tier 2 assets or your foreign currencies, the article says that they needed the foreign currencies and the gold to protect the banks that will remain from bankruptcy and to maintain the health of the banks. So they need you and me. All we have to do is continue to be patient as much as we can and keep our vibrations high and keep a positive mindset, knowing that the alliance, the commander-in-chief, and the military are doing all they can in their power to destroy this central banking system and the deep state. Also, something important occurred last summer, and that was the Supreme Court of the United States determined that state-sponsored banks, this is how you know we're returning to the republic and to our sovereignty, state-sponsored banks can now operate independently from the Federal Reserve central banking system. They can have their own charter, their own rules, and their own gold, and issue out their own gold-backed currencies. You see how states are operating as countries here in America, because that's the way it was before we had this usurpation of our great country and our great American government or republic. So we talked about how the first bank collapse occurred just recently, last week in January 2025, but there were other banks that had collapsed over the last year or so. And here in this article, it talks about the 15 most recent bank failures. January 17th is when the first bank failure actually occurred here in 2025. And it was the 15th bank collapse or bank failure since 2019. It goes on to talk about how that occurred and what those banks are that failed in the last few years since 2019. So you have Pulaski Bank out of Chicago that collapsed on January 17th. You have First National Bank of Lindsay that occurred in Lindsay, Oklahoma in October of last year, that collapsed. You had Republic First Bank in Philadelphia that collapsed in April of 2024. You had Citizens Bank in Sac City, Iowa to collapse in November of 2023. You had Heartland Tri-State Bank in Elkhart, Kansas to collapse in July of 2023. Who else? Signature Bank in New York, which collapsed in 2023 as well. In March, Silicon Valley Bank collapse as a bank failure that occurred in Santa Clara, California on March of 2023. Alameda State Bank in Kansas in October 2020. First City Bank of Florida collapsed in, Fort Walton Beach, Florida in October of 2020. Then you had First State Bank in Barboursville, West Virginia. That's right outside of Huntington, West Virginia, that collapsed in April of 2020. They go back in time a little bit, and they talk about how City National Bank of New Jersey collapsed in Newark, New Jersey on November the 1st, 2019. Resolute Bank in Ohio, Mumby, Ohio, collapsed in October on the 25th in 2019. And then Louisa Community Bank collapsed in Louisa, Kentucky. So again, those 15 banks that have collapsed so far, from the most recent to the oldest: Pulaski Savings Bank, First National Bank of Lindsay, Republic Bank, Citizens Bank, Heartland Tri-State Bank, First Republic Bank, Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, Alameda Bank, First City Bank of Florida, First State Bank, Erickson State Bank, I think I missed that one, City National Bank of New Jersey, Resolute Bank, and Louisa Community Bank. So some of those banks we knew were not compliant with Basel compliances, and they had enacted in some nefarious practices, like, making people take out loans with interest rates, because putting an interest rate or usury on people is biblically incorrect, as well as it's against our republic. But some of these banks were funding the trafficking and MK Ultra mind programming of these babies that have recently been rescued. So they have to go away. Now, we talked about how the military is being used to rescue our babies and to restore our republic. We know President Trump put more money into the military in order to do this. And he also signed 4 executive orders to support the military. He said he was signing these 4 executive orders to reverse Biden's initiatives. And I do have an article here. Basically, what the article suggests, and I'll show you the article in a minute, that he was reinstating members of the military that had been forced to separate or mandated to leave due to vaccine mandates. He's reinstating them. The second executive order was a process to establish what he called the American Iron Drone, and he called that a comprehensive mission shield to land the American homeland. The third executive order, or EO, was put in place or signed to eliminate gender radicalism in the United States military. No more transgender people in the military. You're either a man or a woman. And President Trump said in America, we only have two genders, female and male. The fourth executive order is about eliminating the DEI initiatives, and DEI set aside offices within the military. So any of those offices or initiatives that have to deal with diversity, equity, inclusion will now cease to exist in the military. And the reason why he's going against these DEI initiatives is because a lot of them were used not to help so-called minorities, not to help families, but actually to usher in transgender people and to usher in people that were not American. See, we don't know how the military, not the military, but the deep state works. What they'll do is they'll roll out something and make you think it's for a good purpose. And you'll get on board like, yeah, we want help for minorities. We want diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, to help minorities. But you don't know that they start off saying they're helping minorities, and then they'll slowly roll it over into helping people that are transgender or men that are dressed in women's garb, taking the place of women that are taking the jobs. Okay. And then ushering in illegal, unlawful people to take those jobs and just call them minority. Another thing that they were doing behind the scenes, family, is systematically destroying the nuclear family. Now, I know helping minorities and classifying women as minorities seem very, very benevolent. And, in some cases it may be. But when you consider all the things that the deep state was doing, like eliminating jobs slowly, okay, calling the woman now a minority and saying she needs favor, putting in programs so that it makes it easier if she has any type of problems. I'm not talking about being abused or being mistreated. I'm talking about any type of problems. Now she can leave her husband and her covering and her provider and protector, leave the children's father, and she can get benefits from the government. Now, I'm not talking about those who just need it temporarily, but she can get those benefits, and it makes it more enticing to be a single woman, to leave your marital situation, to leave your community and depend on what the people are calling zaddy or the government for these benefits. In the short term, it looks benevolent, at least these women can stand on their own, they're independent, they're getting benefits, they can provide for their families. But when at the same time you're eliminating jobs and the men don't have the same type of any programs or initiatives and they don't have a job, now the men are not marriageable for the women that are independent getting jobs and benefits. Okay, so just follow me here. Okay, I'm a woman that's classified as Black. I'm not Black, I'm Aboriginal or Indigenous. But I'm saying I live this reality. I'm telling you how it goes. So now you have women on the system that was only supposed to be used temporarily that get comfortable. We get comfortable when we're not working. We get comfortable being alone and single. We get comfortable not having a male covering and not having a father in the home for I'm speaking from experience. Okay. And then you get so comfortable taking a government job or government benefits like AFDC or food stamps or Medicare, Medicare, not Medicare, that's you pay into that. But some of these entitlement benefits, now you don't even need a man. And we said it. I'm talking about women in my generation. I don't need a man. What I need him for? And he's not marriageable. I'm not even attracted to a man that can't provide. You see? And then they have school to prison pipelines so that the children are not thriving. The children don't have the tools. The children are to thrive. The children are being mind manipulated and miseducated, told lies and fed lies. And so they become disgruntled. They feel like they're in a prison system themselves. And then you have some of the teachers doing bad things to children. Oh, I've seen it all in America and abroad. And now you have the school to prison pipeline where you're systematically controlling a child's mind, ringing a bell that reminds you of the Pavlov experience, as Chief Pontiac told us the other day, also known as Chief Hayes. And when you study, I study psychology, you ring a bell, it causes when they did this Pavlov experience with dogs, you ring a bell, the dog would just look at you, but then you ring the bell and you put meat in front of them and the dog will start to salivate. Then you ring the bell without even putting the meat in front of him, he'll continue to salivate. They use experiences like the Pavlovian experience to condition the mind of our children to be enslaved and to be comfortable with these ways that mimic what happens in prison. You have to look and see the similarities between schools and prison. So then they have a whole pipeline. They make it the educational system a little more challenging or hard for some of our children to follow by you feeding them lies, okay? Talking about slavery. You'll always be a victim. You'll never thrive and never get ahead with all of these programmings that they had. And then you tell the children of European descent, your forefathers were all evil. They enslaved the people classified as Black. You should feel guilty. These babies have been traumatized on top of the lies that they've been fed. And most of the stuff they learn, they won't be able to use when they get out. So they become bored. They check out and they look for other things to do. And we know about the school to prison pipeline. So the male children learn better, according to our research, when they know how to apply what they learned to real life. Females too, but especially male children. So they took out shop, they took out vocational schools, they took out the things that young men could do with their hands, they took out the things out of schools that would teach ladies how to be homemakers. So now you have a bunch of women that don't know how to cook or not interested in cooking, making clothes, rearing children. None of that they don't learn in school. And the male children don't learn how to fix and build, which is their nature. So then we wonder why our children get into drugs, why they don't want to listen to authority or respect their elders. Why? Because they wonder, why do you send us to the enemy to be educated when it's not doing anything for our lives, for our mind, for our well-being? And so we're bored, we check out and we look for other things to do. And some of them get in trouble. Some of them go and funnel into prison. So who does that leave for women to marry? At the same time, instead of making sure that men have the skills that they need, know how to work, know how to build, know how to construct, because that's what men do. That's the male principle. It's part of their nature to explore, to build so they can provide and protect. Then you take away jobs and you make it more attractive for the woman by having these DEI programs in there. And she said, and you say, not all these companies are saying, oh, for diversity and equity and inclusion's sake, we're going to hire the woman over the man. And now the men are unmarriageable, unable to provide and protect. I'm just speaking in generalities, and the woman is more secure. Okay. This is not and has not worked in our favor. But in the short term, okay, you got a job, you were able to leave a situation, or maybe you were just able to sustain yourself and take care of yourself as a woman. Wonderful. I've done it myself. I have many degrees. I've worked in universities. I've worked for a medical school. I've worked in counseling. When my kids were small, I worked in places where I could take them. And then my family started a school so we can educate our own children. And I worked that way by making sure I was able to be with my kids and make money at the same time while I taught them and the community. But in the short term, yeah, it's good. And all of these government benefits, AFDC, food stamps, but they were put in place to get on your feet, not to stay there. And then you have people stay there and teach it to their children and then their children's children. It becomes a generational thing to suck off the breast of the government. Meanwhile, there weren't the same type of programs for the men. And so they got the women addicted to these programs and made us feel really entitled and made us feel comfortable and like we didn't need men. Women in my community was saying we got Black girl magic. We did this on our own, not even giving any credence to the fact that it was the government programs that gave us a lot of positions. Yeah, we did a lot on our own, but these government programs allow us to get education, allow us to get jobs. We got comfortable. And what did they do? Then they started giving that to the other communities, they started giving these jobs to Caucasian women who are now classified as a minority as well. So now, even not just our women, but you had Caucasian women and other women from other nations taking these jobs, and now we don't need the men. That was an attack on the nuclear family. Now, where are we? We have a lot of households without husbands, and they played a trick on us, family. So once they got the women adjusted to this and comfortable with this, then they started funneling over to the LGBTQ community and giving these diversity, equity, inclusion, and programs, jobs, and money to LGBTQ community, and then to transgender community, and then to unlawful, illegal people that were here claiming to be American in name, or just by virtue of being here, and now having the jobs. And now we see we've all been played by the government. See, Donald Trump, in his early training, did some military training. He's a commander in chief. He also is a businessman. He has a degree in business and economics. And he's surrounded by military, and he's surrounded by very, very smart people. They understand and understand the art of war. They know how these things work. So a lot of us are very emotional right now. We don't want diversity, equity, inclusion programs to cease. We don't want critical race theory programs to stop existing. But please know that these programs were not put in place to make sure so-called Black people or minorities are taken care of. It was all a plan all along to funnel in people that can come in this country unlawfully, and they can take over the jobs, and we'll be left out in the cold. Now, if you want to know more about that, join us tonight at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will have Asir, the Duke of Tears, who has studied extensively American history. He knows, understands, and understands how America operated before the group of bloodline families usurped authority from here. He knows about how they've operated once they got here. He knows which bloodline families are really behind the scenes controlling the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the Clintons and such. And he knows that many of those people who control the bloodline families that came out of Europe actually have this skin complexion. And they were thus in control of the populating the 13 colonies. You have to read the books that he's going to talk about how a lot of the 13 colonies were actually controlled by and populated by so-called Black nobility and Black kings that came out of Europe. It's crazy. So there are some bloodline families that you and I know about, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and such, and there are some that we don't know about that are behind the scenes controlling everything. And those are the ones that instituted this whole system of white supremacy, racism, division. Another thing about this equity and inclusion thing is they told us that we needed to acknowledge marriage between the the same-sex genders. And we were like, yeah, we get that. We don't have a problem with that. I mean, if you're living together, why not be married in order to get the benefits? But what we didn't know was they wanted us to buy into that, so that then, I'm telling you, I watch it happen. So then now when you buy into, same sex, relationships, which, hey, we all have same sex relationships in our family, and it's their business. But as a country, to acknowledge and say, yeah, you can have same sex marriage, we didn't know that we were trying to protect our family members who were, same sex marriage, but we didn't know that they would use that to then usher in pedophilia pay. Now you're talking about same-sex love. Why not talk about love between different ages? Love has no age is what I started to see some of the advertisements that would even be put up on big old billboards in Louisville, Kentucky. Love has no age. Trans love or something weird like that. We didn't know that they were setting us up for this whole thing dealing with pedophilia pay or harming and molesting our children. And that's why President Trump says we have two sexes, two genders, male and female. Okay. And he also said, we won't get into that. We know that some states, I'll just say, are making it a little harder for people to just leave their marital contracts. No more of this just leaving because you have irreconcilable differences. Now we need to have a reason to separate because the family has been attacked, the nuclear family. So join me tonight at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk to a real sheik, Asir Dukateers, and he'll talk about how we're returning America back to a godly nation, a nation that respects source and respects the two genders that we've always acknowledged here. Now, I know I mentioned bloodline families, and I just wanted to show you something that I have shown you before. Let me see here, because it's not something that we are often taught, but I did do a couple podcasts on this called We've Been Lied To. Thank you so much. Thank you for the Cash App Blessing family. Thank you for the acknowledgement. And thank you for being here. Let's take a quick look at these bloodline families that actually controlled the world. Let's see if I can do this where you can see it. So these are the 13 families that we think ruled the world. They're going to be on my left. Let me get that off the board for you. Where is that? I'm trying to see how I can get that Cash App off of here so you guys can see. Here we go. So I want you to know this isn't even about skin complexion, okay? It's not about race. When you study economics, as my children have done, my sons have done, and my daughter now, she's got her master's in business. But when you study economics, you learn, as my youngest son actually taught me this when he was in the School of Economics at the School of Business in Louisville, Kentucky, that race is not even about skin complexion. See, they hide the truth in certain disciplines. So when you study economics, where it's all about money, right? They will come straight out and teach them that economics and race had nothing to do with skin complexion or little to do with skin complexion. Race is about a race to resources. So when you have a race to resources, then you might institute certain programs in order to keep certain people oppressed and enlarge yourself. Well, these people in power had to first enslave the Aboriginal copper-colored people here in America, because America is actually where it all started. The Garden of Eden is here, according to some scholars, and man sprung from the soil here and then went out into the rest of the world. So if you support that ideology, you can argue that. But if you support it, then you know that that's the reason why you had these entities in non-human or extraterrestrial, because they could be a former human just outside of this plane here. They could live on the outside or inner earth. They're still outside of this terrain, right? So these extraterrestrials that came here first enslaved and suppressed the people that were here and made them prisoners of war. And then when you suppress them as far down as you can, then you go after the others. So it wasn't about just stopping with us. It was about first suppressing the first or Aboriginal people and then going after the Europeans. And then you get them suppressed as much as you can. And then you bring in migrants and immigrants unlawfully, and then you enslave and suppress them. And then now you got everybody under the system of enslavement, okay? While still in their resources. So these are the 13 bloodline families that we think rule the world. The Astor bloodline, the Bundy bloodline, the Collins bloodline, the DuPont bloodline, the Freemans, the Kennedy bloodline, Yes, all of the presidents are bloodlines. The Lee bloodline, the Onassis bloodline, the Reynolds bloodline, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Russells, and the Van Duyn. But here are the ones of the families on my right who actually run the world. And no, most of them are not Caucasian, okay? The Borgia, the Breakspear, the Somaglia, the Orsini, the Conti bloodline, the Shigi bloodline, reminds you of Chicago, the Colonna bloodline, Columbus come from that bloodline, and he was a melanated person. The Farnese bloodline, the Medici bloodline, sounds like medicine. They were probably in control of medicine. The Gattini bloodline, the Pamphili bloodline, the Este bloodline, and the Aldobrandini bloodline, the ones that truly run the world. That's why I said we got to stop thinking about skin complexion. It's not about skin complexion. It's about bloodline families that's ruling and controlling the world. It ran so deep that it's taking a long time, or has taken a long time, to dismantle those families and their systems of enslavement, including their monetary system. And our sister Nikki says that would explain why everybody wants to be here. Okay. Oh, thank you. Green Eye says, congratulations to your daughter on her master's degree. Makes me proud. Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. We have one of the chiefs in the house. Chief Longwind says, protect traditional families, not nuclear, my elder, always respectful. Oh, thank you so much. Chief says, respect traditional families. Can you put in the chat what you mean by traditional families? Are you saying that's the proper way to say it? And rather than saying nuclear families, I received that. Thank you so much. Larry says the only people seeing a wealth transfer are those who are selling precious metals and foreign currencies. Maybe now, but when we actually have the announcement of the republic being restored, then you will have Nasara injecting trillions of dollars into the global economy, and you'll be able to go to the banks and exchange your currency. So you will be able to realize the wealth transfer. But if you get into it now, this is how people became wealthy during the Depression. They bought depreciated assets. We're in a depression right now, a recession, however the economists call it. It's an economic depression. You buy depreciated assets and you hold on to them and live with them, live like, and knowing that you are wealthy, okay? And you walk in that reality, and then you'll be able to actually live like it, manifest it in a way that other people can see it once we have the currency exchange. I appreciate what you're saying. What I'm saying is this is an opportune time to get in on the wealth transfer. Many of us are indeed related to those bloodline families. Thank you, Crown Princess. I appreciate you for saying that. Yes, I noticed that a lot of people from different communities love adopting babies classified as Black or babies with a lot of melanin. Even some of those entertainers. Thank you so much for sending me a blessing, Sister Cynthia Jones. I appreciate the Cash App blessing. God bless you. Heaven smile on you, to all of you that are donating to support my work. I appreciate you. May the Most High bless you 1,000-fold for what you have given to me. A lot of these entertainers that were adopting babies, and specifically those with a lot of carbon or a lot of melanin, understood and overstood the value of melanin. Some people say it's worth more than gold. And then keep in mind that, unfortunately, they would do certain things to take their blood, absorb their blood, their organs, their essence, in order to live longer. Children with a lot of melanin has been the preference for elite families. And this is why they target Hades. They targeted Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina. They target a lot of communities by putting drugs in their communities, and what else? Guns, so that they can incite violence or entice them with violence, and then unalive them, and then they can eat and absorb their energy in their blood. Oh, thank you for this. My great friend Taj sent this to me. A traditional family is often considered synonymous with a nuclear family, meaning a family unit consisting of a mother, father, and their biological children living together, typically with the father as the primary breadwinner and the mother primarily responsible for childcare. However, traditionally can sometimes imply a more rigid set of gender roles within the family. Thank you, Taj Diami Bay. God bless you. Oh, I love it. I love the way you all helped me. Thank you so much. And thank you to the chief that brought that to my attention that it should be called traditional family, not necessarily nuclear family. So, New Puri says, my physical avatar is a walking millionaire. I love it. You're welcome. Golden Arrow says, thank you, Dr. Kia Pruitt from Kentucky. Nikki says, yes, they steal the energy of the children. Yes. And they also steal the wombs of the women. They target women in general, but their preference is women with melanin or with a more concentrated melanin, darker women, Aboriginal women, or indigenous women, or women classified as Black. They want the wombs of the women so that they can sustain themselves and so that they can grow life in our wombs and so that they could mate with the women. This is one of the reasons why you have so many problems with women having fibroids, issues with their reproductive organs, because they will put certain chemicals in the foods or have you to live in high stress and chemicals in the medicine so that you can have these issues. And then the medical profession, which wasn't necessarily always working in our best interest, they would then take out your wombs. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but in the last 30 years, we've had so many hysterectomies that doctors would recommend based on something that you used to be able to treat with some certain herbs or certain things that grandma would give you, or by changing your diet, or even by some pharmaceuticals. It was what the lesser of the two evils rather than just taking out your whole womb. Now, I do understand and overstand that some people needed that to happen. Maybe it was what you were going through was so bad you had to have your womb removed. But what I'm saying is they targeted certain women to remove your womb so that these entities, these beings that had taken over the planet could live, and then they could grow children in your womb. Yes, they could do that outside your body. So unfortunately, it's always been about destroying the people and controlling us and enslaving us. Taj Diami, good to see you again. He said in New York, it's almost normal for C-section births. Wow. They don't even propagate, natural births anymore, but cesareans. Nikki says probably doing all types of rituals on them. Yes, on our women and on the children. It is indeed an American horror story. Absolutely. Thank you for your comments, family. Keep checking in. Keep please sharing your information. So we said that President Trump had signed at least 4 executive orders to support our military as they have been taking down the deep state systematically for a very long time, some without pay, without respect and recognition. And many of them were forced to stand down, to leave, or to quit their jobs because they would not take the you-know-what during the global pandemic. I will make sure I put that in the description section for you, family. That article. Here it is right here. Trump signs 4 executive orders. 4 more executive orders directed at the military. So there were more even before this article came out. So we have the military being used to save our children, to rescue our children. I told you they rescued to date tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of trafficked children. And they use the military to secure the borders. That's what I haven't talked about yet. How is the military securing the borders and why? Well, we know that migrants have been coming here unlawfully. Immigrants have been coming here unlawfully as well. The migrants will be coming from Mexico because that's really still considered part of America and different South America, Central America. The immigrants will be coming from other parts of the world, immigrating into our country. And many of them have been allowed to do this unlawfully, not just under the Biden administration, but under many administrations. The border situation was completely laxed. And in fact, when they had a time where they talked about catching illegals or unlawful people when they tried to come into the border, they would just do a catch and release program. Very fortunate for me, I've spoken to one or two people that were at Border Patrol and those people who were actually police officers that worked in the Border Patrol who told me that the reason why they supported Trump is because they saw under other administrations how once they would catch people that would migrate or immigrate through Mexico into our country, they would catch them. They were told to release them and let them go. And they were like, no, we can't keep allowing this because a lot of the people that are coming through these borders and entering our country are not only unlawful, but a lot of them were actually involved in criminal gang activity. There were many men who came through masquerading as Mexican migrant workers or people that were just looking for opportunities that happened to be military age men. And they were given cell phones, they were given they were given money when they came here, and they were given opportunities. And what they would do was masquerade as Mexican, but they were coming from Venezuela, Brazil, and other South and Central American countries. I know this by talking to people who were involved in securing the borders and patrolling the borders. Also, what you had was a lot of people bringing in children who probably weren't even their babies. And this is how many children became involved in trafficking. So you would bring the children in with you, traffic those children, make you some money. So that had to stop. And a lot of women that came in here as well were enticed to come to America for opportunities and jobs. And when they got here, they realized that they were really involved in a serious criminal trafficking type of situation. Not just those that were from Central and South America, but you had many that came from Asian nations that were trafficked as well. As a matter of fact, I remember when my husband and I had gone to his favorite Chinese restaurant in Louisville, Kentucky. They literally put up a note and said, this restaurant has been shut down. It was his favorite restaurant. So, this is etched in my mind. We have shut down this restaurant due to trafficking of women and children. Therefore, the federal government or somebody, I can't remember what particular entity, has overtaken this restaurant. It will no longer exist. So I was like, wow, they're bold and brazen. It's like right on the door. Excuse me. And then it actually made the media there in Kentucky. So many people, again, were brought here, trafficked, laundered, abused, put into porn films. And this is why a lot of our lawful constitutional sheriffs are cracking down on trafficking and prostitution, because they're saying a lot of people that are prostitutes and are working in the porn industry are trafficked women and children. But you see how they got us, and particularly a lot of our males, our men, addicted to pornography, not even knowing that these are trafficked women and children. And I heard that they have people doing horrendous things in some of these pornography television programs and websites. And so this is something that the Republic is not going to allow. We're going to get rid of all that because it doesn't help marriages anyway. So thankfully, President Trump is using the military to rescue our children and to secure the borders. Let's see what I wanted to say about that. President Trump has put armed military forces in control of key infrastructure points to ensure the safety of American citizens, or America, period. And this is why we gotta have massive deportation because we've had too many people coming into our country unlawfully doing unlawful and illegal things. Now, when you look at this map here, and I'm not going to be before you much longer, you can see that this is just a brief little bit of information about who has been allowed into this country. This is a map that says these are the amount of eligible people to be mass deported. And this is not even taking account of those that, that we don't even know about. So if you look at each state, it tells you the tens of thousands of unlawful people here in our country. Here in Florida, we have 900,000 illegal, unlawful people here. In Texas, you have 1.7 million. Look at this. And I don't know what state this is, 600,000. In California, you have 2 million. Look at this map. Tens of thousands and into them, hundreds of thousands and millions of people that are not here lawfully. And some people will say, well, you can't just get rid of them. You can't deport them. Well, at least President Trump, can you see this? At least President Trump, the alliance and the military are sending them home. And the sad part is some of those countries are saying, we don't want them back here. And Trump is saying, oh, you will take your own nationals and your own citizens, or the people that are from your country back, or else we'll put a high tariff on you. How about that? But we are sending them back because it's only right to do things lawfully. There's no way as an American, you're going to be able to go into China or another country and plot yourself down on their land and vote in their elections, have access to the jobs, all the resources, and be considered Chinese. It doesn't work that way. Now, maybe in the golden reality, when everything's worked out, and we know not maybe, it will happen where you'll be able to visit different nations, but you want to do that respectfully. Going into another person's country, on one hand, I can understand it or understand it because you're looking for opportunities. But again, a lot of these people were doing crimes, committing crimes, harming people, even some of those crimes being very violent. And others got the money, the resources, the jobs, the housing, and that displaces the Americans. This is why President Trump is saying we have to do what's in the best interest of America first. So when you consider all of those hundreds of thousands of people and millions of people that are here unlawfully that we know about, think about how Americans are being displaced when it comes to jobs and resources. Here's something that I had to bring to a lot of people's attention because many of the articles have been scrubbed. And if you try to fact check me, some of the articles will say this is not true. But the Biden administration admitted to flying in more than 320,000 migrants secretly into the United States. But now if you Google Biden admits to flying in 320,000 migrants, it will say that's false. That's a false claim. But you can see it here. I saved this article and I reported on it. It is on my YouTube channel and Rumble channel, the video that I did here. Biden administration admit flying 320,000 migrants secretly into the United States to reduce the number of crossings at the border. And this has posed as a national security breach, or as the article says, it has national security vulnerabilities. Now, when you have a whole administration admitting to flying in 320,000 illegal migrants secretly, they flew them in, how many are not accounted for? This is why President Trump had to put the military at key points on the borders. Now, in case you haven't heard, we have experienced all-out war at the southern border here in America. And I don't know if the mainstream media is reporting this the way they should, so that we can all know that this is a real situation. But not too long ago, it was a couple of days ago, We saw the Mexican drug cartel shoot at the National Guard and the military at the southern border. I'll see if I can find that for you. And so when the Mexican drug cartel shot at, so what happened was there were people that were illegally crossing into the border. And when that occurred, the National Guard and the military tried to stop them. Well, then the Mexican drug cartel reportedly shot at them. And then, of course, they have to respond back. So if that continues, we really could have President Trump to do more than declare a national emergency. He could like shut everything down, all the planes from flying. He could really shut down traveling. He could issue out an emergency broadcast system announcement. He could do anything. And this is why I'm saying it's so important for us to stay positive and keep our emotions in check, because we don't understand or know how deep this war is and how long it has been going on. Here's one of the articles I found. U.S. Border Patrol agents exchanged gunfire with Mexican drug cartel, according to the report. U.S. Border Patrol near Fronton, Texas, reportedly exchanged gunfire at the southern border with suspects or suspected drug cartel gunmen from Mexico. There were no injuries in the incident near Fronton Island and an uninhabited island in the Rio Grande and Starr County, Texas, according to the reports. The island is a disputed territory about which Texas and Mexico have had major conflicts. So this occurred on January the 27th at approximately 1:29 p.m. at Texas time. So family, please just know that this war against the deep state is very, very serious. In fact, one of our patrolmen, according to reports, actually was shot and killed somewhere else. See, patrolman shot and killed, unalived, I should say. U.S. Border Patrol, this was on January the 20th in Vermont. And I'll briefly show you that article so that I can get out of here. This war is serious. It is costly. It's costing money. It's costing lives. And it is costing a lot of time, effort, and energy. Here's the article here, Border Patrol unalived in Vermont. Oh, this says traffic stops, during traffic stops at certain key points when people are trying to enter the, well, I wonder Vermont. Yeah, Vermont, I didn't even know that was a key point. But again, President Trump put military at key points in our nation for what he says as a measure to protect Americans. Trump is doing all he can to make America great and safe and peaceful, not just prosperous, but safe and peaceful as we have entered the golden era. He cannot do it himself, so he put money into the military. He issued out executive orders to support the military, and he needs us to keep our emotions in check and to make sure that we have a high emotional quotient, and make sure that just means that we are emotionally intelligent as we move forward and stop just being emotionally charged and have knee-jerk reactions to when the president or the military people that are put in place to speak and do press conferences, when they talk about how serious this war is. We need to know that people are literally losing their lives as the military is protecting this great nation. So we had the Mexican cartel and people here illegally. And I know a lot of people, feel some type of way. We want to be empathetic towards people, towards men, women, and especially the children. But we have to do things decently in order. And this is a land where Trump is restoring law and order. Anytime you do something unlawfully, like enter somebody's country or enter their home unlawfully without being asked and without going through the proper channels and procedures, then you are what we call a criminal. And some of them are operating as terrorists. Trump has called some of them terrorists because they literally are terrorizing our country. And some of them are committing violent crimes. And we don't negotiate with terrorists. So that's about it, family. I just want to let you know that things are happening to restore our peace, prosperity, and our sovereignty. And they have to happen in a systematic way, according to the law, according to military codes and military laws as well. But on the other side is a glorious reality. On the other side of all of this is complete planetary peace. It is being completely free, and it is a prosperous, abundant reality. In the meantime, stay positive, family. In the meantime, keep an abundance mentality, knowing that there's more than enough for everybody and that we're all going to be okay. In the meantime, keep your families uplifted. In the meantime, create the change that you desire to see in the world. As a matter of fact, as I said to you, the 10th Amendment says that local communities, so operating at the state and local level, local communities have more power than the federal government. The federal government is not even a government. Okay, it's not even lawful. It's not our republic. Govern means to manage or control the mentality, the menche, the mind. The government that we've had in place have been controlling the mind by putting in programs, statutes, legalities, and codes. This is one of the reasons why the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the Chevron doctrine, eliminating the powers of these agents who call themselves government agents. All of those governmental agencies, 441, will either be completely dismantled or restructured in order to fit into our lawful republic. That happened and started with the overturn of the Chevron doctrine. So no longer are they able to just put out all these legalities, statutes, and codes that would enslave us. Okay, no longer can they do that. No longer can judges force you to pay a fine when you challenge them or when you don't go against those statutes and codes of the 441 fake federal agencies known as the FBI, CIA, EPS, EPA, Homeowners Association. I mean, we can go down the list. I have a list of 441 of them. So all the things that we see happening, family, is a complete dismantling of the deep state. And that's what Trump promised us he would do. He said, I will go after the deep state with all my power and all my energy, and I will systematically destroy them. That's what he said before he came back as the 47th president and CEO and commander-in-chief of the United States Incorporated. And he's doing just that. This is why he's going after them through the executive orders, which again is their tool. He's using their own tool and their own device against them. Then once he do that, he will make an announcement that the war is over. We don't know when that's going to happen, but we do know we're going to have a huge celebration that will start on Memorial Day, which is about May the 30th, I think, or May the 31st, from Memorial Day of 2025, and it will go all the way out to July 4th, or the 4th of July, Independence Day of 2026. So we know that something wonderful is going to happen during that time, other than this 250-year commemoration celebration of the United States. So we're going to have that again at the Iowa State Fairgrounds between Memorial Day of 2025 and 4th of July 2026. So we should anticipate some announcements coming out before that great celebration. One other thing we want to keep in mind or note is that March 4th is the lawful inauguration for our republic. So we'll see if he's going to be the lawful president, or if we're going to have lawful elections for the republic. We don't know, but we're going to have Asir the Duke of Tears to come and talk to us about that this evening. In case you didn't hear me say it before, family, we are going to have a discussion on the return to royalty, return to our sovereignty with the amazing Sheik Asir the Duke of Tears tonight, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Come join us. Bring your pencil and your paper and bring your questions. Having said that, family, thank you so very much for participating in our discussion today. My name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I hope I've said something to raise your vibrations and inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. Peace, family. See you today at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go out and make this